Hello everybody, and welcome to the first video in our Intro to Modeling in Maya. This video we're going to be covering some basic interface and navigation stuff, try and get people more comfortable with what they're looking at in Maya. Because as we can see, when you first open up Maya, there's a lot on the screen. And if this is your first time opening it up, there's a lot to take in. And I remember the first time I logged into Maya for the first time, and I looked at this and I was like, what? What is all of this? And I immediately went to YouTube to try and find something that could help me sort this all out. So hopefully this is the video people are finding to help them sort all of this out. With so many tools, there's a lot of different options on how to find those tools. So one of the first things we want to look at is this drop-down menu, which is our mode menu. So the default is that it will be in the modeling mode, and you can change it, and each mode will change this menu bar. So we can see that's the rigging mode. The animation mode changes into menus that are focused on animation, and so on and so forth. So if we go back to the modeling, it once again puts it back to most of the stuff that you need to do modeling. And then you've got these multitudes of different toolbars. This one generally doesn't change a whole lot. You can hide and unhide options within this toolbar with these little tabs that you see. One of the big ones that I like to have exposed, it's initially the transform box option, but you can change it to different things. Like if you want to rename multiple objects in a scene all at once, you can change it to rename, select a bunch of objects and rename them. We'll get into stuff like that later. So, take a look through, open and close these menus, see what you need and don't need to have visible. In the early going, you probably just want to leave stuff as is. The one that I would say to definitely open up is this second to last option here. And then underneath that, you've got your shelves. Shelves are similar to the mode in that when you change different shelves, you get different options within that shelf. So all the different types of shelves have quick little one-click icon boxes for that function. Now all of these functions that you see on a shelf can be found within these menus. So for example, we've got combine here. And if we go to mesh, we also see combine. Now the one advantage to using the menu version of it is that you can also opt to choose this options box, which depending on which functionality you choose, so like for the transform, it's a different option box, but you can change options for each different function. Now, I definitely wouldn't suggest making edits to any option boxes until you know exactly what they are and what they do. And hopefully as we go through this series, you'll get a complete understanding of each of these important things. And then from there, we have this sidebar full of options. And the first of it being your different tools. So you've got your select tool, lasso tool, painting selection tool, the move tool, rotate tool, and your scale tool. Now you'll notice that each of these tools have different hotkeys on them. Hotkeys are something that for certain hotkeys you're definitely going to want to get to know quickly. And as we go through different things, I will try to stay on top of saying which hotkey I'm hitting if I don't particularly go to mouse select on it. So like Q is selection, W is move, E is rotate, R is scale, and I will very quickly move between those options. And then the next thing that you see down this is layout windows. So we've got regular panel layouts, we've got the quad view layout, which this is one of my defaults is the quad view. You can also go to a split screen view, and then the final button here will show or hide the outliner. I always have the outliner visible. And we go back to the main perspective panel. One thing I very much like to be able to do is to hit spacebar with the mouse within my perspective panel to pull up this quad view, and then I can change my mouse. So if my mouse is over top of the side view, it gives me a focused in on that side view. I can hit spacebar again to go back to my perspective view and just use spacebar to quickly go between views that I need. And that spacebar function will change based on what your last split view was. So if I do between these, it will pull up the split view. But if I go to the quad, it goes to my quad view. So something to keep in mind for your different panels. Now within these panels, you can change what that panel shows. So for example, I could, for some reason have multiple side views if I wanted to. You can also create additional cameras and have these views set to a custom camera, but that's stuff that we will get into a little more advanced later on through this series. I just want you to be aware that each of these different panel views has multiple different menu options within them. So you can change your shading view. So within it, you can change how your lighting is, what objects you want to see within that view. The renderer, which you'll typically stick within Viewport 2.0, but of course you can also view through the Arnold renderer. Uh, Arnold will probably touch on very lightly within this series. And then once again, the different panels that you can do. Now, one nice thing is that you can do the tear off or tear off copy. So if I do a tear off, I can pop this menu out and move it around. I could set it to a different screen. I could place it wherever I like. So a lot of customization with things that you can do there. So let's just get this back to where it was. And then on the next side here, we've got channel box, modeling toolkit, and the attribute editor. Now the channel box is going to show you a lot of the basic channel information for an object. So if we use our shelf here to bring in a polygon sphere, we'll see that we have these different channel box options. So we've got our translate, rotate, scale, the ability to turn visibility on and off. Standard with visibility though is that you're going to hit either the H key to hide and unhide objects. You'll rarely use this. You'll typically be using this channel visibility if you're using it within animation, which again isn't something that we're really going to cover within this series, just to be aware of why it's there. Within this channel box, you can also change the name of the object. So, but you can see that is not the name of the object here. That is the name of the shape. If I wanted to change the name of it here, I would need to go and do it here. Oh, and I should probably spell properly. Now you'll notice when I put in the space, let's do that again so you can see. Why do I keep putting that extra E in there? Sphere, space, say low. If I hit enter, it's automatically going to put a underscore where I had a space, because you cannot have spaces within your naming conventions. It automatically will place that. So just one little thing to keep in mind when you're renaming things. Then we've got our inputs. So for the polysphere, if you want to change how it was created. Now this is just for the one that you have created. It won't change all future creations, just so you're aware. But we can go in and change, for example, the subdivisions. We can lower it down to 12 or raise it up to 50. So using the channel box gives you a more exact method of control over the object, more precise than, say, if I was to scale it this way. You can see it's, you could try to get it to a certain number, but if there's an exact number that you want, like if I just want 5, I just grab that box, select them all, hit 5, and it sets it to 5. Hit 1, hits it to 1. So this, for more precise edits, your channel box is what you're going to want. And to get even deeper into our edits, you have the attribute box. So again, we have our sphere low, and then the polysphere option that you saw in that channel box is in more detail here. You have your initial shading group, which is in regards to its shading and material function, and then the actual material that is applied to that object. So if we go into that polysphere, we can again change these options here. A lot of more detailed stuff in here that you typically won't touch. This is the more popular spot to be in, and you can also change how the UVs are created for it. So that's again something that we'll get into later. Just want you to be aware that the attributes editor is an overall view of all of the options and edits that you can do on an object. Channel box primarily focuses on the XYZ axis channels and that visibility channel. And then we've also got this layers functionality down here. So one thing you can do that's very useful is to set different layers. So to show that off, let's also create a cylinder option. We'll hit our W to bring up the move option and just kind of move that away and say I want a layer here, and this layer we'll rename our sphere layer and hit save. So with that sphere layer, I can select this sphere, right click on that layer and add the selected object to that layer. So we can see under the inputs now, we have the sphere layer and the polysphere within that input. And then if I want to change this visibility box, I can make that invisible. So if you want to hide certain aspects of a scene, that's where layers get to be really useful. And they have multiple other functions, but primarily what I use the layers for is to hide. So to continue our little tour of the layout that you see, the next thing we have is along the bottom, we have this timeline, which once again is another function for animation primarily. And then we've also got this scale box, which allows you to scale within the timeline that you're viewing. So say you want to see, from 70 to 148. And again, you can use the precise edits to see exactly where you want it. And then if you want to see the whole thing, you just match the outer extents and it will show you the entire box. So quick little overview of the timeline. And then the next box we have underneath that is a quick little scripting box where if you tap on this, you can get either Python or Mel scripting. And you can type scripting in here if you know the scripting languages and execute different things. This is the output box for scripting. As you can see, displays the command response. And then if you want to see even more, you can click on this button to get into the scripting editor. So next, let's go back to the outliner and take a closer look at that. So the outliner is an overview of what's in your scene. So the basic view that you're going to see is your 4 main cameras that are being created by Maya, the objects that you've created, and then just the default lighting set and object set settings. Now you can go into a more detailed full node view by unselecting this DAG objects only. And there you see every single node here you see every single node that makes up the scene. This is, again, more advanced stuff that we're not going to get into here. I just want you to see that the outliner has a ton of options to it on what you can do. And you can choose what type of objects you want to see. Let's say if I only wanted to see geometry within that, then that's all we would see. If I wanted to see only the cameras, we can select that and see only the cameras, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the other great things within the outliner that makes it so useful is the ease of use of finding and selecting objects. especially if you're, if we're focused in on the sphere, which something I should have mentioned is the focus button is the F key, is for focus or frame. It brings that object focused within the frame. If we choose the cylinder, for example, and hit F, it will focus that. If we have nothing selected and hit the focus, it will frame everything that is within that outliner. The outliner is a quick way of managing objects within a scene. So for example, if I grabbed both those objects by shift selecting them, or even control, if you wanted to select individual items, you can control select on things. But you can put things into a group by selecting them and hitting Control G, which creates a group, which again, you can rename. We can rename this our shapes group, for example. And if you open that up, you'll see the different objects within that group. Now the handy thing here is that when you have a group, it moves everything within that group. You can edit the pivot point for that entire group while maintaining the pivot point for the objects within that group. You can move stuff out of a group by either selecting it, holding the middle mouse button, and dragging it up out. If you want to put it back in, middle mouse button, drag it on top of the group, put it back in. You can also parent or unparent, which is what you're doing when you're dragging. Unparent is Shift P, parent it. You select the object and where you want to parent it to, and hit P for parent, and it will move it back into that group. And then lastly, the actual navigation within this screen can be a little tricky because for some reason, all different 3D software seem to have different navigation settings. So for Maya, the things you'll find that you do most is holding Alt and clicking and dragging on the screen to move around an object. If you middle mouse button with Alt selected, it pans the screen. If you, with nothing selected and just drag select, that gives you a hotbox selection on the screen. The middle mouse button will zoom in and out. You can also go back and forth between different camera views that you had. So for example, if we're focused in on our cylinder, and then we focused to, our sphere, and then focused to our cylinder. If I wanted to quickly go back to a previous view, I can hit Alt-Z or Alt-Z, depending on whether you're Canadian or American or where you are in the world. And it will go back to the previous camera views. And if I keep hitting it, it will keep cycling back through previous views. And I can hit Alt-Y to redo those camera views. So Alt, Z, and Y for undoing and redoing camera views. Control Z and Control Y, like in most programs, is a undo and redo of the last action that you took. So that should pretty much cover everything for a quick overview of our interface and the base navigation within Maya. We'll go more into depth with a lot of these tools and functions as we get deeper into this series. In the meantime, open up Maya, take a look around, create a few basic objects with your toolbar, see how you can edit them either with your tools down the side or within the attribute editor and channel editor, and get yourself familiar with some of the basic functions that you can do within Maya. If this video helped you out at all, please hit that like button. And if you want to see future videos within this series as we get more and more advanced, please hit that subscribe button and that little bell for notifications. And until next time, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching.